Mr. Rockwell?
Kelly?
As you know, I'm Charlie Kelly. I'm a lawyer. I represent Sargent. Mr. Rockwell, you talked somewhat frequently on your direct examination about the MJ way, right?
Yes, sir.
And with respect to the MJ way, the period between 1998 and 2014, MJ repeatedly tried to bid jobs in Northwest Indiana and did not obtain a single award of work, right?
I don't know about repeatedly. I'm not familiar with them.
Between 1998 and 2014, you're aware of the fact that MJ Electric bid for work in Northwest Indiana, correct?
I'm going to check lack of foundation. Mr. Broccolo stated to start working for MJ Electric in 2008, so it's a formal question as a lack of foundation.
Is it your understanding, Mr. Broccolo, that between the period 1998 and 2014, there were numerous times when MJ Electric bid for work in Northwest Indiana?
It is not.
Did you try it all?
No.
And as far as you know, there was no work that MJ Electric had done in the heavy industrial sector of steel or petrochemical in Northwest Indiana prior to 2014, correct?
I can't answer that.
And with respect to your MJ's position, certainly no office in Northwest Indiana, right?
That's correct.
And certainly no, as far as you know, simple movement of MJ employees and estimators to open up an office in Northwest Indiana, right?
That's correct.
And if it's the MJ way and you've got estimators, that's something you could have considered if you thought it would work, right?
It is something to consider.
So you never considered that, right? There was no business plan to open up a Northwest Indiana office, right?
That's correct.
Using MJ estimators, right?
Correct.
There was never any pro forma with respect to opening up a Northwest Indiana office utilizing just MJ estimators from Iron Mountain or Chicago or anywhere else, correct?
Mr. Kelly, I'm assuming you're referring to before this.
Prior to the time you saw Mr. Boston, right? Correct. And with respect to Mr. Boss and Mr. Frame, there was actually no plan for a Northwest Indiana office until you actually met Mr. Boss and Mr. Frame, right?
That's correct.
And you felt, did you not, that they would provide leadership in delivering industrial projects to MJ in the Northwest Indiana market?
Yes.
And this is leadership that was being added to MJ, right? This is not something you had in your company at the time before you met them, right?
Correct.
So on our chronology, we've been talking about our chronology. So by January 17th, you called Mr. Boss to tell him you were interested in moving forward, right? Correct. And by the 23rd, you and MJ's president, among others, Steve Brighton, had decided you wanted to proceed with Mr. Boss, Mr. Frame to open a Northwest Indiana office, right?
We had agreed to hire Tom, go after Tom, Jim Boss, correct?
And to start a Northwest Indiana office for MJ Electric, right?
Correct.
And with respect to this opening of the MJ office with these two, I know we've also had a variety of discussions today, or you have today, with respect to bidding projects all over the country. It's a fact. Mr. Boss said he wouldn't relocate. He was going to proceed with you. He was going to do it right here in the Northwest Indiana market, right?
We really didn't discuss that point. You know, the plan was conform.
And with respect to Mr. Frame and Mr. Boss, I think you told Mr. Saldinger that by January 24th, so with our timeline, 23rd, you and Mr. Brighton decided you want to extend the offers. On the 24th, oral offers are extended, right?
I believe that's the time frame.
And so, from start to finish, meeting Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss to extending offers is 10 days, right?
It is.
And number 4, as you have historic memory of MJ, is MJ moved in just 10 days from meeting 2 individuals to deciding you're going to start an office, right?
That's correct.
And with respect to the team for a minute, I think we were talking about the employees who are now MJ employees, former Sargent employees for a little bit when you were on direct. And it's true, is it not, that MJ had done no estimating in this particular market prior to the time that Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame came in?
I think we already talked about that. I said that I wasn't familiar with what estimating we had done in that market since 1959 when the company started.
Well,
is that a question? Maybe I misunderstood your question.
Yeah, maybe. I thought we had a discussion, and I don't want to belabor this, but in your deposition about whether or not you were familiar with whether or not there were any estimators from Chicago or elsewhere who had actually performed estimating on projects in the Northwest Indiana region, and you told me no, there had not been. Do you recall that, or you don't recall it?
I'm just trying to, could you repeat the question? What is your question then?
Yeah, so my question is, it is correct that there were no MJ estimators performing estimates for jobs in the Northwest Indiana market prior to the time that Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame arrived, correct?
So you're referring to any time in the last 50 years? That's not the question was framed. Prior to Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame, that's... I just aren't trying to understand the question as well. What time?
Is that at any time?
At any time. I want his understanding. So it's one of the 2 executive vice presidents at MJ.
If he knows.
Business.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't know if there's any estimators that have done any estimates.
And if you go back to the chronology for a second, after the offer, oral offers are made on the 24th, the offers are accepted by Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss by January 30th.
My record, it's 30th, 31st, somewhere in there.
Yeah, right in there, at the end of the month, 30th, 31st. And then we heard about February 3rd. On February 3rd, you came and had a meeting with them in East Chicago, right? Right. And then looked at facilities for potential office space, correct?
Correct.
And then you had your dinner you just described, right?
Correct.
And that night at the dinner, there was actually a discussion of the business analysis, right?
There was a discussion of the business analysis, yes.
Yes. And there was also a discussion about that business analysis and the need for at least 5 general foreman estimators to come on to make this profitable office, correct?
The plan was to bring 5 estimators on and that was discussed.
And those 5 estimators were, in fact, identified that night to you, correct?
There were several names that were bounced around and things like that, but the focus was really on the staffing of that office.
And 5 general foreman estimators, right?
That's correct.
And you were told that night, right, that Mr. Albertson, Jim Simmons, Jeff and Paul Schumann, Jim Mattis, and Kit Cavilla would be among the first people to be sought after by Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me see if I can refresh it. Your Honor, It's page 79. We'll give you a copy of the transfer.
Thank you.
Now, I'll just read you a passage to see if this refreshes your recollection. On page 79, line 8, I said, and as of that date, that was a reference to February 3rd in the context here. Was there a discussion about personnel, who personnel might be to be in that office? Answer. We had targeted, in terms of our thought process, what it would take to open that office, as we would have, obviously, Tom and Jim. And we would want to staff up, get 5 general foreman lead estimators, so we had a target of those numbers. Obviously, you can see that later in the document. In the discussion of key hires, did that occur on February 3rd? Answer. Yes. At the dinner. Yeah. Okay. And it says they have 5 GFs that lead customer accounts and perform estimating. Do you see that? I do. Did they identify those 5 GFs? Did they identify who those 5 GFs were at that point? Answer, they did. Does that refresh your recollection?
No, under objection, that's not impeaching. The way you phrased the question is that they told you that they were going to, the ones they were going to sought after, and they identified names. What you just read is not impeaching at all. I'm not sure if he's trying to refresh his recollection or impeaching. This is typically not how you do.
Well, whether they discussed who they were taking or not. Is that what we're trying to get to?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to, Your Honor.
I think he answered the question, right?
So you needed 5 people. Now, were there specific
right.
5
I
people?
asked,
Okay.
Do you recall specific people? And he said, no, they did talk about specific people.
Okay.
That's all. And as a courtesy, I know in different courts, different people have different customs, and I'm trying to do my best, Your Honor.
Okay.
Here.
It's fine.
My tendency is to ask the witness, I don't know how Mr. Saltier does it, but the way I do it as a courtesy to the witness is to ask, does that refresh your recollection? If that's improper, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
All right. Does it? Let's finish up.
Does that refresh your recollection, Mr. Rocco?
It does. And as I recall your question here, you named 5 specific names. And those are the folks that are working for us now. Those 5 specific names were not talked about like that. There were several names of folks that they would consider. And we spoke primarily around the 5 slots we needed to fill. And at the point in time we were talking, none of these individuals had been talked to. So there's no guarantees, there's no nothing going on. We're talking about building this office.
And when you say these individuals have not been talked to, how do you know that?
That's what our plan is. We talk about that.
With respect to 5 individuals, the names that I just mentioned were the names you heard that night, right?
Amongst them.
In addition to Alderson, Simmons, Jeff Schuman, Paul Schuman, Jim Manns, and Kip Bell you heard that night, what other names did you hear that night?
Again, there were just a bunch of names that came out.
Did you hear any names from Higher Empor that night?
Don't think so.
Did you hear any names from Meade that night?
Not that I recall.
Did you hear any names from Continental that night?
Not that I recall.
Did you hear any names from any other electrical contracting company that night?
Not that I recall.
Were there names from MJ Electric bandied about that night
Not that I recall.
that would fit the general foreman estimator position for Northwest Indiana?
No, I don't recall talking about that.
So the core group were Sargent employees' names that were mentioned, and with respect to the business analysis, we were talking about that. This actually tied to the business analysis that you ultimately had in your possession, right?
What time did the business?
So let me show you. I think, Mr. Brockwell, that earlier an exhibit, I think it was exhibit 62. When you have that, let me know, Mr.
I
Rocco.
have Mr. Brown.
And Mr. Rocco, if you turn with me to exhibit 60. There on the fourth page of that document, or fifth, and we should use, for clarity of the record, the bait stamped lettering since it's available, MJ 1600. There you have the estimator PM listing. There are 5, right?
There are.
And the enticement category shows $7,500, right?
It does.
That was talked about with Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss that night, correct?
It was.
And the trucks were discussed that night, correct?
They were.
And they were approved by next morning, right? Making trucks and enticement.
So there's that email that I sent out. Sent out to get that taken care of. I think it happened the next day.
Right, by February 4th, those were done, right? Do you want? I can slow down and look at documents if you'd like, but is that the best of your recollection?
Yes.
By February 4th, those enticements have been approved? By the next day?
By the next day.
And in addition, I think that you told me that when it comes to estimating, it's certainly preferred to have someone with experience on prior projects. Do you recall that?
I do.
And so each of the former Sargent employees, now MJ Electric employees, have experience on prior projects, right?
They do.
And their experience is with the sorts of customers that Quanta would like MJ to be pursuing, given Quanta's interest in expanding in the petrochemical area, correct?
Yes.
And that actually came up, did it not, when you attended a president's meeting in early January in Houston?
I have to clarify. So, just in my deposition, I talked about a president's meeting in early January. It was actually early February. So, just so you know, I think it was the 2nd or 3rd of February. But yes, the answer to your question. My deposition, I think I said early January. It was supposed to be early February.
Okay, no, I clarified that. But yes, the answer. Right. For the $6 billion parent, they want you, meaning MJ Electric, among others, to be busy trying to carve a path in these markets that relate to, among other things, petrochemical, right? Because they're interested in oil and gas expansion, right?
You're giving a lot more credit to the $6 billion company looking at a piece of MJ Electric. What Quanta does is it pursues different markets, does that through a variety of ways, acquisitions, organic growth. And then we at MJ Electric, obviously take a look at that and would then go forward and see if there's some opportunities for us as well. What Quanta expects is the operating companies to pursue those best opportunities that they can find, keep the people safe, make a profit.
And so one of your focuses then would be in connection with that corporate strategy to pursue that corporate strategy, which would be to find new markets in which you can operate to further that corporate strategy, right?
Yes.
And in fact, Quanta's been very active in that area in the last couple of years, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with 10Q filings that Quantum makes with the Security and Exchange Commission? And they've made 4 acquisitions already in the first quarter of 2014 of electrical companies to pursue this oil and gas business, right?
I can't speak to the specific of the 4 companies we purchased this year, so I don't know which ones those were.
But you're aware, right, that they're on an acquisition binge between 2013 and the first quarter of 2014, as reported before the Securities and Exchange Commission. They've acquired no fewer than 10 separate electrical companies to pursue this oil and gas business.
I'm really not in a position to talk about Quantum being in an acquisition binge. Public company.
If you want to put aside the language, that's the problem. You're aware that this is a major push for Quantum, right?
It's one of many pushes.
And you are the head of the Industrial Controls and Power Division. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
For MJ Electric?
Yes.
And it's your division that is supposed to be making strides in this area in support of that corporate strategy, right?
It's my division that needs to make strides in all kinds of areas.
Yeah, but this is one of them, right, Mr. Rockwell? And you're trying to do that, right, by getting this Northwest Indiana office opened up, right?
I'm doing it for a lot of reasons.
But that's one of them, right?
I'd say so.
Because you have a P&L responsibility for this division, right?
I do.
So you're under pressure to try to build something, correct?
Always under pressure to make profit. Keep our people safe, make a business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, and with respect to the Northwest Indiana market, I think you mentioned that at this point, in addition to bidding on certain jobs locally, you're also bidding on jobs around the United States, right?
That's correct.
And so, from your perspective, Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame are important because they can help you with projects in all kinds of areas, not just Northwest Indiana.
Both.
And that's been a focus of yours from the start, right?
What's going to focus
To have them working in other areas besides Northwest Indiana.
Both. We're looking for whatever opportunity comes in our door. We attempt to bid it. If that opportunity works out, we'll go pursue it and execute the work.
Now, and in respect, if we go back to, it's preferred to have estimators who have experience with past projects. The first piece of work that came to MJ Electric was a job relating to Monticello, correct?
I don't know if that's the first piece of work, but it has come to
Okay, so you're familiar with what Monticello is, right?
I am.
And you're familiar with the fact that there's Monticello work at MJ Electric, right?
Correct.
And you're also familiar with the fact that the estimator who submitted the bid on behalf of MJ Electric was actually someone who had worked on on Monticello lines at Sargent. His name was Jim Simmons, right?
Yes.
And Jim Simmons had worked on various lines, lines 8 through 14, correct?
Correct.
At Monticello. And if you take a look for a second at exhibit 14. Right, what you're right. Now, here you see an exhibit which is on MJ Electric Stationery. It is addressed to a Mr. Welker. The rate line is monosol line 18, and the project manager estimator is Jim Simmons, right?
It is.
And if you look at exhibit 15, there is another document on MJ Electric Stationery. It's addressed to Chris Welker. It relates to monosol line 18. The estimator, the project manager identified working on this on behalf of MJ Electric is Jim Simmons, right?
It is.
And I think you mentioned earlier that you had retained an expert in this case, right?
Correct.
And that expert, an individual named Mr. Wild, right?
It is.
And he prepared a report in this case, did he not, Mr. Rockwell?
He did.
And if you look for a second and exhibit 69. Mr. Rockwell?
I have.
And is Exhibit 9 something that you've seen before?
69, yes.
Yes. If I misstated it, I'm sorry, but yes, Exhibit 69. It's the report of Mr. Wild, right?
It is.
And if you look with me at Appendix C, and in particular go to page 7. Now, Exhibit 15, which we had just looked at, reflected that there was a revised bid being made by Mr. Simmons to Monosol on April 16, 2014, right?
Correct.
And your expert was tasked with trying to determine...
So which exhibit is that? It said it was on April 16th. Exhibit 15 has April 10th. You showed 14 and 15.
Yeah, I think
15 was April 10th.
Well, no, you got that wrong. I'm sorry, Counsel. 14 is April 10th, and 15 is April 16th.
Same project. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Mr. Rockwell, your expert witness was tasked with, among other things, taking a look at the report of Reclamator, right?
Yes.
And Reclamator was the expert retained by Sargent in this case, right?
Correct.
One of the things you wanted to find out was whether any of your current employees, former Sargent employees, had plugged in to the MJ laptops, USB devices, reflected as being plugged into their same laptops at Sargent Electric, correct?
Correct.
And what we'll look at in Appendix C is a reflection of Mr. Simmons having plugged in a Sargent device into MJ Electric, right? On page 7 of 8.
Just don't, you said a Sargent device.
Right. A device that has the same serial number as that reflected in the Reclamator report. Mr. Simmons plugging in and then plugging in the same device with the same serial number at MJ Electric.
Your Honor, objection lack of foundation. Mr. Brockman had prepared this report in order to prepare the reclamare report. So, if
well, counsel, then I can go really slowly then. We can go right straight through each document.
Does he know which device is which?
I can match them up for him if that's what we have to do. You can look at the reclamare report and see a serial number. You can look at...
Well, I mean, is he familiar with the report? Why don't you establish whether he's familiar with the report and if he's read
The
it?
reports both speak for themselves, Your Honor, and Mr. Lyon was here and Mr. Weil will be here tomorrow.
What are you trying to elicit?
Yeah, here's what I'm trying to elicit, Your Honor. That MJ Electric wanted to know whether or not devices that had been plugged in at Sargent Electric had been plugged in at MJ. This reflects that such a device was, and reflects, and this ties into the MJ way of doing things, that the estimator from Sargent, with experience in estimating monosol, is now the estimator at MJ, and on the very day that he's doing a revised estimate that ultimately wins an award, he is looking at 29 separate documents on the MJ laptop that's from a USB device from Sargent. That's what I'm trying to elicit.
Your Honor, if I may, that's not what that document says. That's part of the problem here. The Appendix E reflects activity on a computer while a device was attached. It doesn't say that information came from the device. So that's part of the problem here. That's why the experts really ought to test that.
Does this witness here even, would he know if an employee is plugging something into the, I mean, you're not going to want to go if he knows, if he knew?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, it's not a question.
Okay. And Mr. Barclough, do you know what Mr. Simmons was doing looking at monosol information that he brought from Sargent on April 16th?
I do not.
And is that the MJ way?
What's the MJ way?
To be looking at information from Sargent in connection with an estimate he's doing at MJ?
Check the form of the question is information from Sargent. That's not what the testimony is.
He's described the MJ way. I'm just trying to find out if this is the
But he didn't know.
Checking the form of the question.
He also testified he didn't know whether he's doing it or not.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. Then another question relating to Mr. Simmons and these devices. Are you familiar with that? Is the Executive Vice President of MJ Electric in charge of this division? That seven separate USB devices have been taken from Sargent and plugged in to the MJ Electric system?
I'm familiar with the report that these 7 devices you described have been connected to our MJ system. I'm familiar with that report. I'm also satisfied with the report that no Sargent information has been transferred to any of our computers and is in use. That's what I understand from all of this detail, to be honest with you.
And have you conducted any sort of investigation? Have you talked to any of these employees about the USB devices and what's been reflected in the WOW report?
Your question was, have I conducted an investigation?
Yes.
Yes.
What?
I've conducted an investigation by hiring Deloitte and having my attorneys work through each of these issues and talking about employees and
and have you ever provided any sort of direction saying that these 7 devices that have been plugged in at MJ Electric should be returned to Sargent?
I'm convinced that those are personal information. You did learn through this correspondence, through this testimony here yesterday about Paul Schumann's and in the position returned out to Sargent.
And when you say that now that you're satisfied that everything is personal information, are you saying that you do then know what's on these USB devices so that we can go back and have these questions answered about why Mr. Simmons would be looking at monocell information that he first obtained while he was at Sargent?
The feedback I received in the testimony yesterday, if you want me to talk about that.
No, I don't. I want you to answer my question, which is, are you saying that you look at the information on these USB devices in order to make the statement that you've made, which is you're satisfied that everything's personal information?
I'm satisfied because I...
No, here's my question. Had he looked at the USB devices?
question?
Well, I think,
Has that question answered?
well,
He's trying to answer the question, he keeps cutting him off.
why is he satisfied? I think that's where we're going.
Well, no, my question actually, if I may have it answered, Your Honors, has he looked at the USB devices?
Okay. You want to answer that?
I have not looked at those USB devices. I rely on our expert report.
So, and it's true, is it not, that your engagement with your expert didn't ask that expert to look for any Sargent information, right? Isn't it true that your expert's done not one search for Sargent? Not asked to do one keyword search for Sargent information on these USB devices?
Check is the foundation.
Well, you're satisfied you've hired him. Do you know? Did you ask your expert that?
Actually, Your Honor, the retention was by our law firm technically. So, he can answer the question to the extent he has any knowledge. To the extent of his personal knowledge, I'm sure Mr. Brockman can answer the question.
Okay. Do you have any personal knowledge?
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I do not have any personal knowledge of how this works in terms of searching files and things like that.
Do you think that'd be an important request to make to help you be satisfied about whether or not it was all personal information, that you would have a search of these devices for the word Sargent?
Well, you're describing a methodology that, I just don't know if that's, if you ask me another question, is it, I just don't know how they do it. That's why we have experts.
Well, let me ask you this.
You asked me a
have you
question.
ever gone to Google and typed in a word to find out from that keyword what might pop up?
So I'm hearing from you, I have gone to Google.
Okay. And did you think it might be a good idea for your expert to type in using his sophisticated software the word Sargent to see if there's something on there besides personal information, Mr. Brockman?
So, again, I've retained experts, a lot more expert than my Google expertise. So I've relied on them to look through this, and I'm really quite satisfied. We hired a Deloitte, one of the best in the business, and sat down and really went through a lot of hard thinking about do we need to retain that when we know inside if we're not using any information. There's no Sargent information in our system. We knew that, we understood that. We made a decision to get the best that we could. And Deloitte has got a wonderful reputation. I'm very comfortable that they did it the right way.
Okay. And that's good enough. The search has been everything you wanted. Now, let me ask you this. Let's move away from the search to protecting information that is relevant in a lawsuit that's underway. 4 of these devices that have been connected to the MJ system are missing again, right? Are they missing?
Yes.
And how is it that with a letter from Mr. Schaefer that we looked at earlier, demanding, as of February 20th, that any information you came into possession of that could have confidential information on it from Sargent goes missing in the middle of a lawsuit that you say apparently people in the industry are watching because it's a major issue. How does that happen?
How does
How does these 4 devices go missing since this litigation started?
Check to form the question. There's no evidence that they've gone missing since the start of this litigation has started.
Well, I'll ask some foundational questions there, Your Honor. But Mr. Rockwell, with respect to the USB devices that Mr. Manis, Mr. Alverson, Mr. Simmons, and I have this list, Your Honor. Just a second, I'll get to the report. And one from Paul Schumann. So those are the 4: Manis, Simmons, Schumann, Paul Schumann, and Alverson were not available for your expert to review. Right? Correct. And your expert knows, though, that those 4 devices have been plugged in to the MJ system, correct? And your expert knows that on April 16th, Mr. Simmons was looking at information relating to Monsal that he first obtained while he was a Sargent officer, correct? Correct. And where, well, let me start. When this lawsuit started, what did you do to try to make sure that all the devices that would be relevant as evidence, so we actually knew what was on those devices, versus you're confident it's just personal information? What did you do to make sure they were here as evidence so that we know what was on this?
What time frame are you speaking?
I'm talking about from March 1st to now.
So when March, on or about March 7th, I think it was the time frame, that the first letter that came to Jim and Tom, as soon as that came in, we spoke to them again. Steve T.R.O. sat down with them, and that's when we discovered that Tom had something at home, and he sent that back. That's when it began.
Okay. And so what did you do with respect to the 5 general foreman estimators who came to MJ to ensure that the USB devices they brought were maintained?
Well, we told them, and I told them, they're not to take any Sargent information, and they committed to do so. I had no evidence that they had taken it. No evidence that anything had been blown in.
And that's it.
I have no reason to believe they would have taken it.
Notwithstanding the fact they plugged things in?
We're talking about March 1st. I'm just trying to keep
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. I miscommunicated there. I thought you were trying to say no. I thought your expert report. You have no reason to believe that.
Expert report demonstrates.
And the expert report also reflects that at least 4 of those devices are no longer available. So, meaning available in this litigation. If you asked you personally, any of these 4 employees to give to you right now those USB devices that were plugged in to the MJ system?
I asked Mark Elverson what happened.
You did?
I did.
And when did you ask Mark Elverson that?
When the report came out that told us there was one missing.
Did you speak directly to Mr. Mance?
No.
Did you speak directly to Mr. Schumann?
No.
Did you speak directly to Mr. Simmons?
No.
And with respect to Mr. Albertson, what did you discuss with Mr. Albertson?
I asked him what happened to that device. He said it was a anniversary pictures, and he had transferred it on, so it was part of a screensaver. He had given it to his wife. You know, obviously no Sargent information was on that, and it's been lost since then. Lost.
Did you say how it got lost?
Again, we're talking about these little type of devices that slip in people's pockets. You see them all over the place, so it's not surprising that something like that gets lost. I've got dozens in my thing at home, my drawer at home, and they're not labeled. You don't know what's on them.
Yes, but the ones in your drawer at home relate to a lawsuit.
Well, again, he plugged it into his machine. He had no feedback that thing was related to something that had been. We didn't have any expert report of that thing.
And with respect to, we haven't spoken with Mr. Simmons, Paul Schumann, or Mr. Mannis. Are you going to take any steps?
I've got our experts follow up, and that's the feedback I got from our attorneys in terms of their discussions with the folks, and they all fed back the same type of thing, that it's personal information. They don't know where they are. And again,
so there's
nothing in our system that would demonstrate there's no Sargent information that's being used. What makes me think that there's something?
Well, how about this one, for example? You're just getting underway, right? And you're a startup, right? In this market?
Fair enough, we're just getting underway.
Yeah, Mr. Boss said you're a startup in this market, right?
Okay.
You agree with that, right?
I would say that a startup doesn't have the backing of MJ.
But in terms of you having any business here, you had none in Northwest Indiana, right? MJ Electric?
When Tom and Jim came on board, correct?
Right. And with respect to one reason why I would suggest maybe you should be concerned is this. Is it just a coincidence? Is it just a coincidence that in looking at Exhibit 15, we have a date of April 16th? Is it just a coincidence that we have an estimator named Jim Simmons, project manager estimator, submitting a bid? MJ? And is it just a coincidence that if you look at your expert report on April 16th, the Sargent information is being pulled up? Isn't it the case, based on that, Mr. Rockwell, that someone like Paul Schumann, who testified yesterday, and you heard him, backed up his backup? He took everything onto a hard drive, including 2 years of information from BP, that if you start working for BP, that's when that information will show up. The same way it showed up with Monticello when you were bidding Monticello. Has that occurred to you?
Your Honor, object to the form of the question. I'm not sure what the question is, and I got lost about 14 sentences ago. So I'm not sure what he's asking.
Do you know what I'm asking here?
Well, somewhat. Is there a coincidence between him using the...
And I think this is the fact that I have a foundation. Again, in the period report, you talk to Mr. Simmons. The object to the question is it's silly, among other things. He didn't talk to Mr. Simmons. He didn't prepare the report. So Mr. Simmons testified at length about what he did, when he did it, and all the timing. And then Mr. Weil will be here tomorrow to talk about his report.
Well,
I think proper questions.
the document speaks for itself.
The documents speak for themselves, and the question I was following up on, Your Honor, the answer was that, well, here, if they want, I can cut that down into smaller bites.
Let's see what you can do with it.
All right, thanks, sir. We're talking about the coincidences of April 16th.
Okay.
Start. And Mr. Rockwell, with respect to Mr. Schumann, you did hear his testimony yesterday, right? And he said on a couple of different occasions he had BP information on that external hard drive, right?
He did.
And what I'm asking you, should it be of concern to you that someone, Paul Schumann, has historic information relating to BP from Sargent Electric on his external hard drive, with the concern being that when the right time comes, you might not see it on your system right now, but it doesn't stand to reason that you would see it on your system in days to come when you're actually doing some work for BP?
Well, we're bidding work with BP and everything else that you just described, so I don't expect it ever to be on any system. I don't know what that information is that he talked about yesterday, and it is a concern that he's got that information, and I talked to council yesterday about what's the proper methodology that we can get it back to the Sargent. And without obviously seeing it, because I don't know what it might be, so we need to understand what it is and therefore get it back. So that's our process. We learned about it recently, and that's what we need to follow up.
And with respect to, it is a concern. It's also a concern, right? Because if that confidential information is being used to benefit MJ, then that reflects a theft of a trade secret, right?
Well, a lot of ifs there. First of all, we're not using it. Okay. First of all, we're not using it. We don't have any Sargent information there. Secondly, I don't know what's on there. And the way Paul described it yesterday, it could be just, notes that he has. It could be a form for all I know, so I have no idea what's on it until we do this follow-up and figure that out. But it's not on MJ's system. It's not going to be used by MJ. It's not, we don't need it. Our business doesn't run it. There's no benefit in that. We make our own business.
And would you agree with me that when you move into a brand new market, you don't have contacts?
Sure.
And that one of the difficult things to do, and one of the things that takes trial and error, if you're going to build a division from the ground up, is to work hard to try to develop contacts, correct?
And we're doing that right now.
And with a new customer who you don't have contacts with, sometimes it literally can take years, right, in order to build the sorts of contacts that will allow you to arrive at a direct bid relationship.
It could take years, it could take weeks.
But it could take years, and you've had experience where it's taken years, right?
I don't know that I can say that it could take years. That's rather long to keep trying, so to speak. I'd say maybe weeks, months.
And with respect to the contacts that Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss had, I think you testified, right, that in your view it was appropriate to download those contacts, right, and take them with them, right?
I said that it was okay for them to make their contacts.
Right. And with respect to those contacts, before MJ got to this market, you had no contacts at BP, ArcelorMittal, or USS in Northwest Indiana, right?
Correct.
And to the extent that you're obtaining those contacts, you're obtaining them right now through Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame and contacts they downloaded, right?
Judge, inform the question.
What was the question again?
I asked the question, Your Honor, which is they're now relying on the contact lists of Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss because they didn't have any contact lists. That's what I'm asking.
Overruled. Can answer the question.
The friend was yes or no, how to answer it. Could you just reword it?
Yes.
Are we relying on the contacts? Yes.
And prior to Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss, you've never heard of Rocky Shaw or Kevin Poland at ArcelorMittal, right?
I have not.
You never heard of Sam or Oweed at the USS, right?
Correct.
You never heard of Lance Dietland, John Phillips, or John O'Brien at BP, right?
I had not.
And are you also familiar with a pre-qualification procedure that MJ just went through with BP?
I am.
And if you turn for a second with me to Exhibit 43. I see you're flipping pages, and I don't want to rush you. Have you found Exhibit 43?
I have, I'm sorry.
No, don't reason to apologize. It's a courtesy of you. I didn't want to ask you to start a question while you were looking at the document.
I found that.
Okay. Now, have you seen this document before, Exhibit 43?
I had not seen it before, but I just reviewed it.
Okay. Well, maybe I can use the document to find out if you have a memory of this. Do you recall a pre-qualification effort that was made by MJ Electric with BP?
I do.
Got in order for MJ Electric to be able to direct it with BP?
I do.
And with respect to the names that were identified, if you look at MJ 1056, there you'll see a list of names. All those are former Sargent employees, correct?
They are.
Now, I think one last thing or two, maybe. If information were flowing back and forth, or flowing actually from Sargent to MJ Electric, your view is that's unethical, right?
If information is flowing back and forth?
It's flowing from Sargent to MJ Electric, you think that would be unethical, right?
Depends on the information.
And you recall us discussing that, right?
During the deposition?
Yes.
I believe we're talking about confidential information.
Right. And it's your view, if it's flowing from Sargent to MJ, that would be unethical, correct?
Yes.
And the last thing, one of the things that, one of the reasons why you didn't want to take confidential information, you didn't want to solicit employees or interfere with ongoing projects was because it wouldn't be the right thing to use information that was Sargent's and not MJ's, right?
Correct.
And you didn't want to solicit because you didn't want to have the impression left once you set up your company that what had just occurred was a coup with respect to Sargent Electric, right?
Wanted the process to be one in which we did it the right way.
And you didn't want to create the impression that what you were doing was out grabbing and making a coup, right?
Correct.
Because if you did that, that would just be something that felt wrong, right?
Right.
Those are my questions on cross, Your Honor.
Redirect.
2 or 3 on. Couple of questions following Mr. Brockwell. Mr. Kelly was asking some questions about your discussions on February 3rd with Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame about $7,500 bonus and the trucks. Remember that discussion?
I do.
To be clear, on February 3rd, were you given a copy of the business analysis on February 3rd?
Or is it not?
Mr. Brockwell, have you given any consideration to Mr. Kelly asked about the plans for growth, Quanta, and electric and going forward? Have you give some consideration to how those plans for growth might benefit local business and the workforce here in Northwest Indiana?
Yes, this
Your Honor, with all due respect, that is outside the scope of what I asked about. But I haven't been objecting just because I sometimes it goes quicker, but I'm not sure which is quicker, so I am going to object because this is outside the scope. And at this hour, I think it's inappropriate.
You talked about Quanta and their growth plans and making a big deal about the $6 billion company.
Overruled.
Go ahead and answer the question.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Is moving the folks here. We have found when we come into an area, especially when there's a lot of work and things like that, is we come in and we're hiring people, and those people take opportunities to go other places. So there's actually more employment when there's more competition. There's positions for project managers and stuff like that, and we're often encouraged to do that. Our conversations with our customers today continue to say, it's good to have healthy competition back in the area and things like that. So those are the feedback that we've received.
And speaking of competition, you've been in a management position for many, many years, fair to say, Mr. Brockwell.
Yes.
And employees have come and gone at MJ Electric and at Exelon and ComEd, et cetera.
Right.
And as an employer in a management position, if you wanted to avoid the possibility, if your goal was to avoid the possibility of an employee leaving and taking their contacts with them and then competing against you, what would you do to try to avoid that possibility?
There's a non-compete.
Those are my questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Brockwell.
Nothing further. Just have to say thank you, Mr. Brockwell.
Thank you, Mr. Brockwell. You missed up on so thank you.
Judge, we do have one more witness. We'd like to, if possible, try to
You want to start them?
today, it's Mr. Nagy. Mr. Elias will be handling that examination.
We're going to finish him today in a half hour, you said?
Well, they have two out there. There's one we could definitely finish today. If we did Mr. Gabb, they have two. But it's their...
Why don't we do the quickest one first? And do you have to do Mr. Brockwell, or Mr. Nagy right away?
I just have to break news with Mr. Gabb that he's going before Mr. Nagy, but
Your Honor,
he's out there.
there is a logistical issue. Mr. Nagy has a work conflict, and the idea was for him to get it done today because he has to travel back to Iron Mountain. So the idea, and I don't think he's going to, when I talk, it's going to make it worse, but I don't think it's going to be long, but it's a travel conflict, and that's why we were, honestly, we haven't planning to get done today. Obviously, there was unexpected circumstances with the court, which we totally understand, but I think we could streamline it and try to get him off. I think we can get it done in 40 minutes, Your Honor, with the...
I guess the question is, can we have a hard stop at 4:30? I don't want to be pressure on the court, but I think that I don't think I'm going to take a ton of time with either of these witnesses. It depends, also on the crossing data instead of the cross.
And the way this has been going, I don't think any of this is going to be short.
We're getting better progressively, which we are getting.
Yeah. In terms of Mr. Maybe I have some frost that, I don't.
What I'm
It might
saying,
be 20 minutes.
what I'm suggesting is if we had until 4:45 instead of 4:30, I think we can get this.
All right, let's call him if you can get it done.
I'll go get him, Judge.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
The good news is that we might be done by tomorrow.
Well, that's good news. We'll get done anyway by tomorrow.
Optimism.
Starting to feel like a hostage here.
Overrules my realism.
The hostage crisis.
You get the water all pumped out?
I had water, didn't have power. Couldn't get the garage door open to get out.
One of us would have just come and out.
Yeah, finally my son had to came and had to do it.
We have rental cars.
Yeah, it was bad. It's like they just got the power on a few minutes, about an hour ago.
Flooded my golf course.
Yeah, Coach, we have
Yes.
to change to one of the exhibits just because there's some handwritten notes on one of them. I don't know if I should be the one handling the exhibits, just based on the guest history, but I certainly can.
Sorry for the delay.
Okay, Snee,
Bill Nagy to stand.
you want to raise your right hand and be sworn, sir? Do you solemnly swear affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Please be seated.
Good afternoon, Mr. Nagy. Could you please state the full name for the record?
William Howard Nagy III,
And who is your employer?
MJ Electric,
What is your current position?
Vice President Operations, Industrial Power Division.
Could you just briefly describe your job function, sir?
Oversee the operations of the division, focusing on the safety, most importantly, of all the employees in the division, making sure that the job setups are consistent, that the reports are used the right way, and that we follow our procedures.
Could you just briefly describe for the court your history with MJ Electric?
Well,
It might be tough for you to describe that briefly, so it's the best you can say.
my father was one of the principals of the company when it started, and I started helping him do takeoffs when I was 6 or 7 years old. I think counting up receptacles and light fixtures and stuff like that. In 1972, I started working in the mechanic shop, sweeping floors, went into the warehousing, and then continued with them working summers until 1979. And I left, moved back out to Colorado with my wife, and went to work for another company for 6 years, and then came back to MJ Electric in December of '85, and I've been there ever since.
In terms of MJ's sort of industry experience, can you talk a little bit about that?
We do projects of heavy industrial electrical contracting. We do mines, concentrated plants for mines, got a lot of paper machines, worked on oil refineries, worked on roll mills, steel manufacturing, galvanizing lines.
What about geographically? Where is MJ
We
located?
work coast to coast, border to border. We don't do a lot of work in the southeast of the United States, but we work in most of the states in the United States. Right now we've got jobs in Alaska, New Mexico, North Dakota, Iowa or Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, currently.
And you have some work in Northwest Indiana, right?
Yes, we do.
What about historically in Northwest Indiana? Can you cite any examples of work that MJ's done here?
Right now, our division specifically, the only time we worked in Northwest Indiana was installing a repeater system for XM radio when that first came out. And we had repeaters to put in Hammond, Gary, and then East Chicago, and then back around the city in south of Chicago. And that's been our only experience that I'm aware of for our week. We're currently working in Valparaiso on a 345 line with our line crews and LakeCo.
Now, you've been here for a large part of the trial as MJ's work was presented. There's been some criticism about MJ's inability to estimate work for steel and petrochemical customers. What's your response to that, sir?
Well, we have, in our history, we have did a lot of steel work. In our recent history, we bid on a part of a large stainless steel manufacturing plant in Pittsburgh. We've done quite a bit of petrochemical in the past. It's a large terminal in Morris, Illinois, called Oxamo Liquid Products. And we got that job for a lump sum. We had 600 electricians on it.
Let me ask you this. Does MJ have the ability to compete for electrical contracting work in Northwest Indiana without using Sargent information?
Certainly. It's all electrical work. And we have our units that we use to put our estimates together. We factor in the labor. It's all, it ends up being raceway wire and terminations. It's just electrical work. It's not that complicated.
So we're not going to go through the whole timeline of, how you were introduced to Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame and that whole process. I guess I just want to know sort of your perspective on sort of what was your motivation for hiring Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame, if you could just describe that.
At first, I wasn't real sure we wanted to hire them when it first came across. I think that Harry Bushell, I respect very much. I've worked with him at Longview Station in West Virginia. We had a contract with a company that he was consulting for, and I really value his opinion and his honesty. And when Marty told me that these two gentlemen were going to be leaving and were willing to come talk to us, I was very, very surprised. You don't see that a lot in this business. People leaving companies, the good ones especially. So I was a little, still, it was kind of too good to be true. And when we met him at the restaurant for dinner on that evening, when we first met him and we started to talk, and have our discussion, the guys sat down and Tom started to try to talk, and he basically broke down to tears. He had to get up and leave the table. It was so hard for him to talk about having to leave Sargent. And, it just hurt him. You spend all that time there, have the company change, and get to a point where you're so disgruntled that he had to leave. And it really struck me as being sincere. And as we talked about their experience, it was pretty impressive what Tom and Jim had done while they've been in that office, the growth that they've experienced over certainly Tom's career. And you seem like honest people, sincere people, and they're the kind of people that we like to employ.
So you mentioned that you understood that they were going to be leaving. What did you mean by that? They're going to be leaving Sargent.
Well, they called, they talked to Harry, and Harry called us and said, these two gentlemen are leaving Sargent. They're going to work for somebody. So we figured there was an opportunity, why not throw our hat in the ring, kind of like a free agent, football. So
when you say free agent, what does that mean?
Well, to me, they're well under contract. They were employees at will, and they had a tremendous amount of experience. They had their career that the knowledge that they possess, of the industries in the area and of the blast furnaces and then some of the other work in the area. It was impressive. I don't run into that very often. Most of our people are homegrown, and to find a couple more people that fit into our strategic plan, it was impressive.
Now, they also have a lot of relationships, right?
Yes, sir.
So, what are your thoughts on, their ability to bring contacts with them?
I think it's all right for somebody to use their experience, to bring their experience with them. If they choose to, develop relationships and, they're human beings, things that they learn through the course of their work. Those relationships are made by people. They're not made by companies. They're made by people keeping their word. They're made by people keeping their promises. They're made by people that keep to their schedule and they make their budgets. So you can't take that away from the human. And they're employees at will, as I said before. If they choose to leave, they're allowed to leave. Slavery, that was some war a long time ago. We don't have that here anymore. So I think they should be able to take their knowledge and their experience.
So during the course of your meetings with Mr. Voss and or Mr. Frank, did they make any promises to you about bringing a team of Sargent employees with them?
They did not.
And did they promise that they would deliver certain Sargent customers to you and MJ Electric?
They did not. They told us, they mentioned that they had a lot of experienced guys in the labor here. They mentioned guys' names that did work, but they didn't promise anybody would go. They didn't know if anybody would go. They hadn't talked to anybody else, to my knowledge, before they left. As far as customers, they didn't have any customers that they could promise to bring. Okay, what they did tell us is that they would try to get us an audience with some of the companies that are in Northwest Indiana based on their relationships, and then MJ Electric would be able to sell their services and see if they could convince anybody who needed them.
Mr. Nagy, were you involved in the hiring process for not only Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame, but also other former Sargent employees?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. And could you just describe sort of that process generally and your particular role?
Well, my role, I just meet with Tom and Jim. That was their interview, the meetings and talking to them. With the other guys, we relied on our computer system to have the resume, have the people applying for the jobs. We had a phone interview with the people where I talked to them about their safety culture, our company's safety culture. Asked them questions about themselves and told them about MJ Electric. Just wanted to make sure I had a feeling, as far as who they were and what their experience was in their own words. Tom and Jim, their introduction to these people and their references were, good enough for me as far as their abilities. I just wanted to make sure they understood what they were getting into with MJ.
Right. During the course of the interview process, do you recall giving any directives to the former Sargent employees about not taking any Sargent information?
Yes. I told them not to take anything, that we don't want anything, we don't need anything, that we have our own systems in place, and that the systems we'll use are MJ Electric systems in the Crown Point office. And we're not using anything else and we don't need anything else.
Mr. Nagy, were you involved in establishing the Crown Point office for MJ Electric?
Yes, I was.
Can you describe your role in that process?
basically Tony, Marty, and myself, Tony found the office, an architect, the architect to do the remodel on it. We brought our furniture, the supplier from Iron Mountain, ordered the furniture for the building and everything, got that down here. I approved that, looked over the drawings, talked to Tom and Jim as far as the plans, how the office was going to be set up. Got our operations manager, Corey Borkart, down here to talk to Tom and the group as far as operationally how things will work. Also arranged for Mr. Dabb, the manager of estimating, to come down for it's a 3-month period continuously where they'll be here full time, and then after that he'll come as needed back and forth to make sure that the guys are using our system and they understand how everything works. Also get the IT part of the place set up, make sure that all that was working good.
Mr. Nagy, to your knowledge, is anyone at MJ Electric using any Sargent information?
No, they're not.
Russ?
Thank you. Afternoon, Mr. Nagy. I'm Charlie Kelly. I'm a lawyer. I represent Sargent Electric. I just got a couple questions, maybe 3 or 4. I think you just said you're interested in Mr. Kramer and Mr. Voss because of their experience in the heavy industrial work here in Northwest Indiana, right?
Yes, sir.
An area where MJ had no work, right?
Our division didn't have any work. Yes, sir.
And it's correct, is it not, that as far as you know, your division hadn't done any work in Northwest Indiana since 1998 in the heavy industrial area, right?
Yes, sir.
And with respect to Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame and things that they promised, isn't it true that Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame said that they would try to bring BP, USS, ArcelorMittal to MJ Electric as customers?
I don't think that they said they were going to bring anything. I think they offered to set up a meeting where we could meet with people at those companies and try to get it down set up. Yes, sir.
And that's happened, right?
Yes, sir, it has.
And those are contacts they brought, not you, right?
Correct. They were their contacts.
And is it also right, Mr. Nagy, that when you were first talking with Mr. Frame and Mr. Voss, they actually did say that they would deliver a seasoned electrical construction team to MJ Electric?
They said they would try.
Let me see. I'm trying to refresh the recollection for a second. May I approach the bench, please?
Thank you. You're welcome.
I want to look at page 31 of that transcript. And it starts at line 15, and it would proceed here through page 32, line 7. And Mr. Nagy, I'm just going to read a few questions and answers to see if it refreshes the recollection. If it does, good. If not, fine. At the deposition, there was a question. Did Mr. Voss and Mr. Frame discuss with you the delivery of a seasoned electrical construction team? Answer, yes. And did they discuss with you the delivery of a team that would include Mr. Alderson? Yes. And Mr. Manis, correct? Yes. And Mr. Simmons, correct? Yes. And Mr. Cabela, correct? Yes. And Mr. Jeff Schuman, correct? Yes. And that team has been delivered, correct? Yes. Do you recall how? Yes, sir. Those are my questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Go ahead.
Question, Mr. Hagan. When you and MJ extended offers to Mr. Boss and Mr. Frame, were those offers contingent on them delivering a team, each individuals, including those individual names?
No, sir, not at all. They were separate offers, made each one of them, and neither one didn't have to be a pair, didn't have to hire anybody else. We hired those individuals on their own merits.
Okay. Mr. Anything else?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
All right. Now, you may step down. Thank you, sir. All right. Is that it?
We may have one more witness
We cranked that one out.
who is here and also be relatively short. He was outside. I didn't think he could get done.
Okay.
But he's here in the court with indulgence. Maybe fairly quick as well.
How quick?
Available?
Yeah, go ahead. How quick? He's quick.
Well, that took, I've been telling it, Your Honor, that took 21 minutes, and we did it equal, if not less.
Agreed.
All right.
It might take longer to get him, but I'll take that.
So maybe you escaped.
Yeah.
No, you nabbed him.
Who's in the parking lot, Jeff?
Escaped.
I do. Oh.
Coming back at gunpoint.
Thank you. If we go back to the so-called approach.
Jeff, you're to the stand.
All right. So, Dad, you want to stand and raise your right hand and be sworn?
Hold on.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dad. Can you please state your full name for the record?
Jeffrey S. Dabb.
And who is your current employer?
MJ Electric.
Mr. Dad, what is your current position with MJ?
Lead electrical estimator.
Mr. Dad, could you just briefly describe your employment history with MJ?
Starting in 1997 as a CAD drafter for about a year as a drafter, and then moved into the estimating department and estimates on the industrial part of it. Kind of went from there, progressed up to the estimating department. Currently, I'm the lead estimator for the electrical industrial part of it.
So with that, about 17 years?
Yes, sir.
So you, as a lead estimator, you're obviously familiar with MJ's estimating process, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you just describe MJ's estimating process for the court?
Yes. We receive requests for proposals from multiple different bidders, either general contractors or owners. Through that, we receive documents, specs, and some different information. When we receive it, we have a process that we set up the documents. We go through request different rates.
It's okay, whatever you...
Yeah. We go rate requests. We do our billing. We do different documents from the proposal that need to be sent for contract review. And then we take those documents, the drawings that are left, then we do a takeoff, which means we quantify all the pieces, the parts, and the different information on that documents for quantification and material and labor pricing. After we do that, then we take and roll up the proposal into the final recap, and then on to, from Activate, we put it into Activate from our quantity takeoff, onto our recap for final pricing and material roll-ups and adjustments, and then we actually roll up our proposal into a final set of documents
with cover letter, clarifications, and any other pertinent documents that are required for the proposal.
So this is a multi-step process that you went through?
Yes, it is.
And this is a process that's been developed at MJ over many years?
Yes, it is. It's a written procedure that we've gotten. It's about a 5-page document with different steps, and each level has to be checked off prior to going on to the next.
Is MJ implementing this process in the Crown Point office?
Yes, we are. I am currently down to Mountain implementing that with our employees here.
Okay. In terms of you mentioned AccuBid. What is AccuBid?
AccuBid is an estimating software that is used for doing takeoffs, roll-ups, and complete estimates. We only use the takeoff portion.
Is there something unique about MJ's AccuBid program?
We completely emptied out the database that comes with AccuBid and built it to our specifications with all of our items that we would normally use using our base labor units, which are history from MJ Electric since 1959.
And you mentioned a concept of roll-up and I believe a pricing recap sheet. What's the pricing recap sheet?
Our pricing recap sheet is an Excel file that has about 15 different tabs in it. We transfer all of our material from AccuBid into the Excel M&C sheets, which is an adjustment where we adjust our labor and adjust it for local factors and contingencies. And then it actually does we can roll all of our general expenses, which is overheads, field site overheads, staff, and then make our labor rates and all of our material investments.
Now, where did the pricing recap sheet come from?
It's been developed by MJ Electric from multiple years prior to me starting, and then I took it over when I started, and I've updated that since.
And is the pricing recap sheet unique to MJ?
Yes, it is.
Can you take a quick look at Exhibit 15 in the binder? I'm sure if it's the binder that's in front of you. 15? Yes, please. If you could flip to 15.
Yes, sir.
And you see the first page is the MJ Electric is April 16th.
Yes.
And in the gray line, it refers to a monosol proposal. It's red too. You see that?
Yes.
And there's a couple pages of the letter, and then if you go to the fourth page.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize that document?
That is the second tab of our recap sheet, which does all of our roll-ups from all over the country.
Okay. And I guess point of clarification. This is Rev 2 in this document dated April 16th. When would the pricing recap sheet and attached documentation, when would that have been prepared?
Sometime prior to that, depending on what the initial issue of the bid RFP was, starting then, and takeoff would be done any time after that, up to probably several days prior to that letter.
Would the takeoff and roll up have been done when you submitted the initial proposal to Monosol?
Yes.
Could you describe, I think you touched a little bit on the bid review process. Could you describe what happens in bid review?
We have a multiple-step bid review. First step is done with the estimator that is doing the proposal and any other involved in that estimate. They try to get it to a completed state for recap review, get all of the base units, their first pass on staffing the job. From that, we go on to a second review, which is review with the lead estimator and the management of that group, whether it's Crown Point or Iron Mountain. And then from there, it goes to the next level, which is upper management, being Crown Point and Iron Mountain folks to overview and make sure that that oversight is happening. And then, depending on the contract value, if required, it goes all the way up to the president of the company or want the service in return.
So are you typically involved in bid review? And who else is involved in bid review?
In Crown Point, it would be Jim Boss, Tom Frame, Bill Nagy, Jeff Tabb, Tony Brocklow, depending on proposal value. And then once we go to the second level, Iron Mountain would be also Mike McCash, Marty Sutton, and Corey Borkart, and then up through Lakeside President. So it's a lot of people, depending on the level that's required based on contract value.
Okay. So, Mr. Dad, there's been some criticism about MJ Electric's ability to bid for work and estimate projects in the steel and petrochemical industry here in Northwest Indiana. What's your response to that?
We can bid work anywhere in the country. We've currently got proposals and different projects going in several states, including New Jersey, Alaska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Upper Michigan, and we've done work here in Indiana at previous times.
Okay. Well, so that sounds geographically. What about different types of industries?
We've also done work in Kentucky on petrochemical. We've done steel lines actually in Indiana. We did T.R.O. line. We've done gas compressors and stuff with those.
Okay. Let me ask you this: when did you first learn about MJ's hiring of Jim Bloss and Tom Frame?
There was a memo that came out.
And would that have been a company announcement?
Yes, by email.
Was that before or after MJ hired Mr. Bloss and Mr. Frame?
After.
Do you recall an orientation in Iron Mountain involving the various times Mr. Bloss, Mr. Frame, and other former Sargent employees?
Yes, sir.
And could you briefly describe your involvement in that?
My involvement was the orientation into our estimating procedures. We rolled out the 5 or 6 page document of our estimating procedures, our estimating responsibilities, and walked all the way through every one of those forms, procedures, and what has to happen for each one of those to get a proposal all the way through.
And did you complete all the estimating training in Iron Mountain before these gentlemen started working around Point?
We did the overview, and then we started doing the estimating from Iron Mountain and supporting.
Okay. So you mentioned that you're on assignment here. Can you just explain why you're here and what you're doing?
I am in Crown Point doing training with all of our estimators, making sure that we are onboarding you guys, doing the proper procedures, not going back to old ways. We always want it to be our way. MJ's got these policies, procedures that have been very successful for us, and we want to make sure it's done our way.
Okay. In the course of your involvement in estimating, overseeing the estimating and bid reviews, have you observed the use of any Sargent documents or information by his former Sargent employees?
No, sir.
Were you involved in submitting T&M rates to ArcelorMittal?
Yes, sir.
Could you take a look at exhibit number 16?
That's it.
Do you recognize that document?
I do.
So what is that?
That is a cover letter that we sent out for the T&M rates for ArcelorMittal East, West, and Berkeley.
So what was your involvement in
I did this estimate completely.
You did this completed?
Yes.
What are T&M rates?
They're time and material rates, work to be done completed using time and materials.
So what information did you use to prepare this proposal, Mr. Dad?
I requested rates from the local unions, and then when I received that, I sent it to our billing department. We had the T&M rates made. I took that T&M information from our billing format and placed it into the ArcelorMittal forms.
Okay. Just one last question, and I skipped over this, but it's important, so I want to go back. If you could turn to a different binder. Can you hear me, Coach?
Yeah.
78.
Also, coach, you can move your binder. I did.
That's tampered. That's not going
I was all highlighting everything good, and can absolutely, I'm sorry, Your Honor, you're going to 78, you're halfway there, but you don't want me handling November. February 1st, not with
So 78, I asked you a little bit earlier about the Monticello proposals. There were a couple iterations of that. Do you recognize 78?
I've seen some comments.
So which Monticello proposal do you recognize this as?
This is the line 18 proposal.
Would this be the original one? So it would be the takeoff and the site recap sheet that we prepared sometime prior to this letter being sent on April 9th?
Yes, sir.
That was my question, John.
Cross.
Thanks, Charlie. Good afternoon, Mr. Deb. My name is Charlie Kelly. I'm a lawyer. I represent Sargent Electric. With respect to companies, how long have you been at MJ?
17 years.
17?
Yes, sir.
During the period from 19, let's see, back to 97?
Yes, sir.
So you've been there between 1998 and present then, obviously.
That's correct.
And do you remember a successful bid that you participated in for the steel or petrochemical industry in the Northwest Indiana market during that period of time?
I'm not sure if it would be considered Northwest, but we did the T.R.O, Indiana.
Okay, T.R.O. In any here in Northwest Indiana?
I'm not sure if the territory of Northwest Indiana did not belong.
And when it came time to send estimators over to your Crown Point office, is there anybody in your Chicagoland office that you've had all these years that you picked out as somebody who would be an appropriate estimator to have in the Crown Point office?
No, sir, they're all utility.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay.
No further questions, Your Honor?
All right. Thank you, sir. Oh, for a second. Okay. You may step down, Mr. Meany. Thank you.
We were just dealing with a couple of housekeeping issues. I think at this point, and I'm sure Council will correct me if I'm wrong, but we anticipate calling, or they anticipate calling 2 witnesses tomorrow.
Subject to.
And then we're going to submit a deposition as an exhibit
Fair enough.
for the court's
You're
consideration.
not going to read it in?
No.
It's short.
It's very short.
Okay.
And I guess our thought was that we might get to closing tomorrow, and if so, we'd like to close
Be nice.
on that now.
Okay.
We're thinking half an hour aside.
Half an hour? What are you going to tell me? I haven't heard. What are you going to tell me?
One of the things we wanted to do, Your Honor, is try out your new technology. That might be fun.
All right. Half hour.
I'm not sure if we're going to be as fancy as that, Judge.
Okay. All right. Keep me awake. Okay.
There'll be refreshments handed out. There'll be
All right.
Free cookies.
All right. 9 a.m.